Welcome back, everybody. You know, we always get a lot of requests for episodes on the X-Files, and I gotta say, I'm always up for diving back into that world.
It really is a world of its own, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what we're going to tackle today, it's something truly unforgettable, even for the X-Files, based on what you guys have been sending us.
It's one of those episodes that sticks with you, you know, and we're not just gonna recap it. We're gonna unpack all the layers, the behind-the-scenes stuff, all of it. So if you haven't seen this episode yet, maybe go watch it first, because there will be spoilers.
Yeah, no holding back today. All right, so quick refresher for anyone joining us for the first time. The X-Files follows these two FBI agents, Mulder and Scully, right? They investigate the weird, the paranormal, all that good stuff. And this particular episode, well, it picks up right after Scully is abducted.
Which was already a huge GE cliffhanger. And then she comes back, but she's in a coma. No explanation, just there she is in a hospital bed.
Total mystery. And that's where we start. The lack of explanation is deliberate, and it sets the tone right away.
You can feel Mulder's desperation. He's like a man possessed. He storms into the hospital demanding answers, accusing everyone. It's almost like he's blaming them for what happened.
And it's understandable, right?
Yeah.
He's lost. He's terrified. It underscores the depth of his connection with Scully, which, let's be real, is one of the things that keeps us all coming back to this show.
It is. And then we meet Scully's mom, Margaret. Her reaction, it's heartbreaking. This quiet despair. And she shows Mulder a tombstone, like a symbol of, I don't know, acceptance or just utter hopelessness.
It's a potent image, right?
Yeah.
It represents the grief and the crushing weight of not knowing. But Mulder refuses to give up hope. He just can't accept that Scully's gone. And then her sister Melissa shows up, and she has a completely different take on the situation.
She's much more spiritual, talking about Scully's soul being trapped, having to choose between staying and going. It adds a whole other dimension to things.
It does. And it shows how everyone processes the unknown in their own way. Margaret through resignation, Mulder through action, and Melissa through this spiritual understanding.
Exactly. So Mulder, of course, he doesn't sit around waiting for answers. He needs to know what happened, who took Scully, why she's like this, and he turns to who else but the lone gunman.
Classic Mulder move. And they don't disappoint, do they? They get their hands on Scully's medical record, stolen, of course, and discover some pretty wild stuff.
Branch DNA. What does that even mean?
Well, according to the lone gunman, it could be a bunch of things, like an inactive identity tracker, or even human-alien DNA grafting.
Okay, so already we're in deep X-Files territory. But it gets even crazier. Someone steals Scully's blood sample right from the hospital. And who does Mulder run into while chasing the thief?
Oh, yeah, X. And this scene is intense. He tells Mulder to just let Scully die, to stop digging, and to prove his point, he kills the blood thief.
Chilling stuff. It shows the stakes, right? Mulder's up against forces he can't even begin to understand. And then he goes to Skinner, accusing the smoking man.
Right, the CSM. But as always, Skinner's playing his cards close to his chest, giving just enough to make Mulder question his loyalties.
Meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Scully's trapped in her coma, and she's having these surreal, symbolic visions.
These scenes are incredibly powerful. She's in a boat, adrift, and she's connected to a pier by this rope.
Oh.
On the pier, there's Mulder, her mom, and Melissa.
Like they're trying to pull her back, but then the rope snaps.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
And it symbolizes her fading connection to life. But then she sees her dad in this white, empty space. And he tells her it's not her time yet.
It's a moment of peace, of reassurance, and all this chaos. And then there's Nurse Owens, this comforting presence throughout Scully's coma experience.
Who later turns out to not even exist.
Which makes you wonder, was she a hallucination? A spirit guide? The show leaves it open to interpretation. And then talk about creepy. Mulder gets a package, a pack of Morley cigarettes with a single matchstick and an address written on it, the smoking man's address.
The CSM playing his mind games, as always. It leads to that incredible standoff between them. Mulder holds the smoking man at gunpoint, but he's still in control, isn't he?
Always. He tells Mulder he likes him, he likes Scully, that's why she was returned, but also that Mulder needs him to get to the truth. It's all so manipulative.
It is, and it sets the stage for the rest of the episode. It's full of these turning points, these moments that shift the course of things. Like Mulder tries to resign from the FBI.
Which makes sense. He feels completely powerless. But Skinner, surprisingly, refuses to accept his resignation. He even tells Mulder about his own near-death experience in Vietnam. It's this rare moment where we see a different side of Skinner.
It's a reminder that he's not just a bureaucratic figurehead. He's got a past, a depth that we don't always see. And then X comes back with a warning, tells Mulder his apartment's going to be raided.
It's like he's playing his own game, running on a parallel track to everyone else. But in the end, it's Melissa who brings Mulder back from the brink. She convinces him to focus on Scully, not revenge.
She's a grounding force for him, reminding him what really matters. And it leads to that incredibly emotional scene where Mulder's at Scully's bedside, just pouring out his heart.
And then he goes back to his apartment and finds it completely ransacked. It's a visual representation of how chaotic his life has become, how much he's lost.
Yeah, talk about hitting rock bottom. But then Scully wakes up. And the first thing she says is that she heard Mulder's voice.
Gives you chills, you know?
Absolutely. It shows just how deep their connection goes. But there's still so much we don't know. Scully remembers nothing after her abduction. She asks about Nurse Owens, and no one knows who she's talking about.
And of course, the mystery of Nurse Owens is never truly solved. Was she real? Symbolic. It adds to the overall ambiguity and the unsettling feeling of the episode.
And then the last thing we see, Mulder gives Scully back her cross necklace. It's a quiet moment, but it speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's like a symbol of their bond, her faith, her resilience. Okay, but now, let's go behind the scenes for a bit, because there's some really interesting stuff there.
So first off, Scully's return in this episode was actually timed to coincide with Gillian Anderson's real-life maternity leave. Makes sense, right? And it's a testament to the writers that they managed to work that into the storyline so seamlessly.
And the title, One Breath. It's not just a random poetic phrase. It's actually taken directly from a line spoken by Scully's father in the episode,
adding another layer of meaning to it. And here's a fun one. The character, the thinker. He was actually named after an online fan who was, well, known for thinking deeply about the show.
That's really cool. And then there's Melissa Scully. Turns out she was written specifically for the actress Melinda McGraw. And get this, there was originally an idea to have a romantic subplot between her and Mulder.
Now that would have been interesting. But I think we can all agree that the focus on Mulder and Scully's relationship was the right call.
Yeah, their bond is really the heart of the show. And speaking of Mulder, this episode was intentionally conceived as a sort of beyond the sea for him, meaning he was all about his emotional journey, his pain, his fear.
It makes sense. Scully's in a coma, so the focus shifts to Mulder, and David Duchovny really delivers. We see a vulnerability in him that we don't always get to see.
And, you know, because Gillian had just given birth, she filmed most of her scenes from a hospital bed. They really had to get creative with the filmmaking.
They did, but it works. You know, it doesn't feel forced or distracting. And Chris Carter, the creator of the show, he had some interesting thoughts about the opening scene with the boat.
He said he wanted to start the episode in a way that was both frightening and beautiful, and I think he achieved that.
Absolutely. And the symbolism is so powerful. The boat, the rope, the pier, it all represents Scully's fragile hold on life.
And then there's Skinner. He's always such a complex character. He can be an adversary, an ally, sometimes both at the same time.
Yeah, in this episode, he's really walking a tightrope. He's got his duties to the FBI, but he also clearly cares about Mulder and Scully. And you can tell he's not fully on board with the smoking man's agenda, even if he can't openly defy him.
Right. It's all about those subtle hints, those looks.
Right.
And speaking of the smoking men, did you know that his iconic line, "I like you, I like her too, that's why she was returned to you," that was improvised?
No way. That's amazing. It just goes to show you how talented William B. Davis is. He totally embodies that character.
And another interesting change. In the original script, Mulder actually pulls a gun on the smoking man. But they decided to change it to a more psychological confrontation.
Which I think was the right choice. It makes their dynamics so much more layered.
It's not just about physical power, it's about intellect, manipulation, control, and that's what makes the smoking man such a compelling villain.
Exactly. All right, so overall, how is this episode received back in the day?
Well, from what I've gathered, mostly positive reviews. The critics praised it for being emotional, gripping, and, well, unforgettable.
Which, considering Gillian's limited screen time, is pretty impressive.
It is. But of course there were some criticisms too. Some found the symbolism too over the top, and some weren't a fan of Scully's sister or the way her coma ended.
Shows how everyone reacts to things differently, right?
Yeah.
You can't please everyone.
But overall, I think One Breath stands out as an episode that really pushed the boundaries of the X-Files. It took us deeper into the characters' emotional lives, and it left us with more questions than answers.
Which, let's face it, is part of what makes this show so great.
Exactly. So, to wrap things up, I think what this deep dive shows us is The X-Files is more than just a sci-fi show about aliens and conspiracies. It's about the human element, the relationships, the struggles we all face, even when we're not dealing with paranormal phenomena.
So here's something to think about. How does one breath and the way it blends the personal with the mysterious contribute to the enduring appeal of the X-Files? And what does that say about the power of character-driven storytelling, even in a world full of the unknown?
Thanks for joining us on this one, everyone. Until next time, keep on digging.